Hey, Phil Steele here. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I'm a fan of Luminar, the photo editing program from Skylum. Now, I previously reviewed Luminar 4, and that video is still available online if you want to check it out. But since that time, Skylum has come out with two newer versions, Luminar AI and Luminar Neo. So in today's video, we're going to look at both Luminar AI and Neo. We're going to see what the differences are between them and why you might want to choose one over the other. Then we'll take a look at the brand new features in Neo that make it the most advanced version of Luminar yet. Some of these new things are really mind-blowing. And finally, I'll show you a handful of my favorite Luminar features, things that I think make Luminar an indispensable photo editing tool that every photographer should have. Yes, even if you have Lightroom and Photoshop, I think you should have Luminar also, especially since Luminar works as a plug-in with both Lightroom and Photoshop, making it very easy to use them together. Now before we get started, I want to recommend a good Luminar Neo editing course that I found. I'll put a link to it down below this video. Because while I'm going to show you my favorite features, there's no way in this short video that I can even scratch the surface of all the things that Luminar can do. So see the link below if you want a full course that goes through every feature of Luminar Neo, the latest version, and shows you exactly how it all works. I highly recommend it. I'll also put links down below where you can get Luminar using my discount to save a few bucks off the price. So first, let's compare Luminar AI with Luminar Neo. Now, a lot of people, including me, have been frustrated with Skylum for coming out with so many darn versions of Luminar. So here's the situation in a nutshell as I understand it. Currently, both Luminar AI and Luminar Neo are for sale and both being supported. Now that's a bit confusing because usually software companies just replace an older version with a newer version and the older version becomes obsolete. So why do they have two versions going simultaneously? Well, here's my understanding of it. Luminar Neo is the latest and greatest version that Skylum intends to use as their path going forward. And Neo has some really important new features like layers, which make it much more powerful than Luminar AI. The problem is not everyone can upgrade right now from AI to Neo. For one thing, Neo requires a more powerful computer. On Windows, it takes Windows 10 version 1909 or later, and on a Mac, it requires Mac OS 10.14.6 or later. So if your computer is not up to those specs yet, you want to stick with Luminar AI for now. Another reason some people might want to hold off from the upgrade is that many of the templates in Luminar AI, these templates that make it easy to change the look of your photo with one click, most of those have not been upgraded to the new Neo format, at least as of May 2022 when I'm making this video. They say those templates are coming, they're being converted, but they're not yet all available in Neo. So if you're a Luminar AI user with a lot of favorite templates that you use all the time, you might not find them in Neo yet. But the good thing is, if your computer has the horsepower to run Luminar Neo, installing it does not disable or replace Luminar AI. You'll just have both programs, which you can use side by side. You could use Neo for the new features including layers, and you could use AI for those favorite templates until they get them converted over to Neo format. So the bottom line from my point of view is this. If your computer can run it, you should get Luminar Neo and start exploring it. Maybe you'll even want to get that Luminar Neo course that I linked to below. On the other hand, if your computer can't run Neo, then get Luminar AI until the day when your computer is upgraded. In any case, you should have some version of Luminar and be using it. I've got links down below this video where you can get Luminar using my discount, so use those links to save a few bucks off the price. Now we're going to look at some of the new features in Luminar Neo, but to start out I am here in Lightroom because I use Lightroom as my photo organizer, so that's usually where I'm starting out, and I'm going to go from Lightroom directly into Luminar Neo. Now of course you can use Luminar as a standalone program, but I tend to use it as a plug-in when I'm using Lightroom or Photoshop. I just hop out, I do some work in Neo, and then that work is brought back into Lightroom or Photoshop automatically. So I'm here in Lightroom, I've got the photo I want selected, this weird dragon that I shot out in the desert in Southern California. I want to edit it in Luminar. All I do is go to Photo, Edit in, Luminar Neo. And I'm not sure if I made any adjustments to this, so I'll just say yes, edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments. And it opens up in Luminar Neo. Now, when we come in, you can see the Presets tab is highlighted, and that's what you see over here on the right. Presets are similar to presets in Lightroom. They're just one-click styles that you can apply to a whole photo. But what I want to do is choose the Edit tab here. And the first thing I always do in Luminar is just go to this Enhance tool called Enhance AI, which is just a general slider, the one-click Make It Better slider. And I just slide up the thing called Accent and see what it does to my photo. It almost always improves any photo. Let's go all the way up to 100 and see what happens. So let's turn it on and off. There's before, after. Yep, that made it better. I'm just going to leave it like that. Now, rather than go into all these tools of Luminar, what I'm going to do is show you the most important new feature that came in with Luminar Neo, and that is layers. Layers makes Luminar powerful in the same way that Photoshop is, because now you can merge two photos, or as many photos as you like, together into one and intersect them and add some parts of one to some parts of another. So we're going to add a new layer just to show you how it works in Luminar. So I'm going to click on plus to add a layer. Now, there are some that came built in with Luminar, and there's a few little textures here that I brought in of my own. There's some stone textures. So I'm just going to add a stone texture to this just to make it look more artistic and quirky. So I'm just going to select this little stone granite texture here. And you can see it overlaid it on top of the original photo. Now it's showing at 50% opacity. You can see right here. Now, if I wanted to see the original photo, I could slide the opacity down to 0. There's the original. If I take the opacity up to 100, then you just see the stone because it's a layer that's on top of the other one. I'll take it back down to the middle now, just so we can kind of see what we're doing. Now, just as you have in Photoshop, you have the option to select the blend mode in Luminar. And it's all the same modes we're familiar with if you use Photoshop. These are modes that tell it how to intersect the photo on top with the photo on the bottom. I'll just pick one at random. I'll pick screen. Now that almost made the top one disappear. I'll pick lighten. I don't really like what that does because I really want it more on the background and not so much on the dragon. I'll pick multiply, which often works well. That's not bad. It's getting more like what I was thinking. Let me pick darken. Yeah, I think I like that one best. Let's stick with that. Now that I've chosen the blend mode I want, I can once again play with the opacity. Maybe if I don't want the texture to be that strong, I can bring it down. I'll bring it up just so we have a little more idea of what we're doing as we're working, because I can always reduce it later. Now let's say I like the way it's affecting the background, but I think it's affecting the dragon a little too much. Just like in Photoshop, you can mask and edit, but Luminar makes it much easier to do. With Luminar, it's sort of a one-button thing. This is the little icon for masking. I'll open it. And the mask is a simple tool. It has a brush and an eraser. You can even add things or subtract things. I'm going to choose erase and just take some of the stone texture off the dragon. So I click the erase tool. I'm going to lower the strength because I usually like to brush in with it a little weaker. I'll take it to about 35% or so. I'm going to make my brush big with the right bracket tool, just like you do in Photoshop. And then I'm going to erase, but I'm only doing it at 35% strength. You can see the red shows the full strength mask, and I'm kind of cutting through it. You can see where I'm painting, it's becoming a little less red. It goes a little slowly sometimes. It takes a lot of horsepower doing this in real time, so even on my powerful Mac. I think you can see the red mask is being cut through a bit. Just to illustrate for a moment, I'll turn the strength way up and you can see how it really cuts through. See how it's taken the red mask away. Now I'm going to switch to the brush and fix what I just did there because I took too much away. I need to go back down to lower strength, fix that little repair. So you can just paint in and paint out, much easier than doing the masking in Photoshop, I think, as many things in Luminar are. So I cut through a little bit, removed a little bit of the stone texture from the dragon, close the mask. I'll take the opacity back down just a little bit. That's a bit intense. And so now I've got sort of an artsy photo. Let's look at the before and after, before, after. And you know, while we're at it, let's just add one more layer just for fun. I'll pick one of these that comes with the Luminar program. Let's pick one of these called sparklers, which is, it's kind of like little light bokeh circles and light leaks. Now, just like in Photoshop, of course, you can flip around the orientation. These little tools that you change, I'm going to flip it vertically. Do I like the little bokeh circles up at the top better? I'll flip it horizontally. Do I like them arranged this way better? I'll just play around with a little. I don't like them down there. I think I like this arrangement best, where these things are up at the top and down it's just kind of, fuzzy down at the bottom. I should push the opacity up and see what's actually going on here. Actually, I like it at really strong opacity. I think I'll keep it up there. And once again, if I thought, I thought this one's, interfering with these horns a little too much, I could always come into the mask for this layer and I could erase a little bit of that. This time maybe I'll make my tool smaller. I'm going to lower the strength as usual. Make my tool smaller. Come in, kind of reduce that a little bit. Although now I need to actually make it a little more general because it'll look too edited if I do that. So I just tone that one down on those horns a little bit. Anyway, I think you get the idea. You have the ability to merge as many photos, as many layers together as you want, and have them interact with each other in any way you want them to interact. This is a huge, huge, powerful new part of Luminar that really makes it compete with Photoshop for a lot of your photo editing tasks. And especially given that Luminar makes these things very simple, some things that are a lot more complicated to do in Photoshop. And when you're finished editing, you just click on Apply, and then Luminar sends it back to Lightroom with the edits. And here you can see the edited photo back in Lightroom right beside the original photo. All right, now we'll do a quicker one. One of my pet peeves when I'm doing street photography or city photography are all of these power lines spoiling the view. So Luminar Neo now has a one-click power line removal tool. Let's go to the Edit tab. It's here under the Erase tool. And you can see there's a button that says Remove Power Lines. I'm just going to click it. Boom, done. That could have taken hours in Photoshop. Now sometimes it leaves a few little imperfections behind. There's a little bit of something in the sky here, but since I'm already in the Erase tool, all I need to do is paint over any little thing I might want to erase like that and click the Erase button, and now it's gone. And I see there's a little tiny fragment there, and maybe I'll take these two little antenna things out and this floating thing that was on the power line there, and I'll just click Erase, make those go away. And I've also got a floating thing up here that I don't need, and a floating thing up here. I'll just take those out too, click Erase. So you can see how easy it is to clean this stuff up in Luminar Neo. Now while we're here, I'm going to close the Erase tool, and I'll just go into the Enhance tool that I always use and slide up the accent slider, see what it does. Yep, it warmed it up. Let me turn it on and off. There's before, there's after, before, after. I think it's definitely improvement. And let me close this and I'll do the whole before and after on the whole photo. So there it is, before with the power lines and all the junk. There it is after, cleaned up. Super quick, just like Luminar Neo can automatically remove power lines, it can automatically remove dust spots like these sensor dust spots you see in this photo. Once again, under the Erase tool, just below Remove Power Line, you see Remove Dust Spots. I'll click it. Done. Now we're going to look at one of the most interesting and creative new features in Luminar Neo. It's called Relight AI, and it's right here under the Creative Tools. I'm going to open that up. The Relight tool allows you to change the lighting in your photo. Luminar makes a depth map of your photo, figuring out what's near the camera and what's far from the camera. And it allows you to change the distribution of light, putting light near or far to correct lighting problems in the photo. And this photo has a lighting problem. This was supposed to be a lit shot. This was from my advanced off-camera flash course. she's supposed to be lit, but the flash did not fire in this photo. So I got a photo where my subject is a little underexposed and the background is really bright. So I'm going to try correcting this with the Relight AI tool. So you can see there's a couple of sliders in here called brightness near, brightness far. That allows you to shift the light from things that are near the camera and things that are far from the camera. So let's just try it. I'm going to slide up brightness near, and you can see what it's doing. It's detecting what's near the camera, which is my subject. And I'll push it way up so you can see what it's doing. Obviously you can go too far. So I'm just going to take a moderate amount of increase and bring up the light on my subject as if my flash had fired. It takes a moment for it to click in. There it goes. And now I'm going to reduce the light in the background by taking down brightness far. And you can see how it's just taking that way down. I go way, way down. So I don't want to go too far and make it look too crazy. I'm going to make a modest adjustment to each of those. So before I do anything else, I'll just show you, the before photo and the after photo after moving those two sliders. So now it looks like my lights worked. Now the final slider in here is called depth, and that allows you to change the distance of what Luminar thinks is near and far. And you can see as I slide it, it kind of changes where it's doing the relight on the background. In this case, I don't want to push the lighting back any further, but this gives you kind of total control over where it thinks near and far are in your photo. So I'm just going to leave it kind of dark in the background by going down there. Now the only thing that looks a little quirky to me is maybe on the edge of her hair where we're getting a little haloing from the adjustment. And this tool works beautifully with almost any kind of shape, but hair is always a little tricky when you're doing these kind of adjustments. And I think it looks all right on the bright side. Here on the dark side, I'm just going to mask and reduce the relight very slightly on that part to see if I can make it look a little more natural. So like every tool, I can put a mask on it. I'm going to erase the effect a little bit, take the strength down into a lower range, maybe I'll make a very big soft brush so it doesn't look too obvious. I'm just toning down that little spot where to me it looked slightly less natural. I'm going to paint a little bit back in this area right here where I made it a little too bright behind her. So now I'm undoing that erase, painting in. Luminar makes it so easy to work on masks this way. That looks a little better to me. And I think while I'm going to erase again, I'm going to just take down the relight on a little bit of the parts that might have been hit a little less if I were lighting her, like the jacket down here. If I were trying to hit her face with my lights, might have had a little less light down on that part down there. So that's looking pretty good. Once again, before adjustments, after relight adjustments. So that's pretty amazing. But since this is a portrait, I might as well keep going and show you some of the portrait tools. So I'm going to close relight. I'm going to go down to the portrait tools. I don't need portrait bokeh because that blurs the background, but this already has a beautifully blurry background, so I don't need that tool. I'm going to go into the face tools and make some adjustments. Now, in addition to the relighting we just did on the whole scene, Luminar has what's called face light, which will increase the light just on the face of your subject. Push it up so you can see what that does. I don't want to go too far and look crazy there, but I will bring it up just a little bit, a little more punch, as if I had a light hitting her in the face. Luminar also has the face slimming, which I don't tend to do that to people, but if you had portrait clients, they might like that. I'll show you what it does. It takes a moment for it to click in and become clear. I'll really squeeze it in. Like I said, I don't tend to do that to people, so I'm just going to leave that undone. Continuing down the face tools, I'll go to the eye tools. Iris flare, I'll give it a little bit. Don't want to go too far with that or it starts to look weird. Enlarge eyes, I'm definitely not going to do that. Make her look like a manga character. Eye whitening, I'll give her just a little touch. Doesn't really need much of that. Eye enhancer, I kind of like this tool. What this does is it brightens up the natural highlights in the eyes. You can see when it clicks in there, I'll do all these tools on and off. You can see before, after, it just pops up the natural catch lights that are already in the eyes. I like that one. Red eye removal is not needed here. Dark circles under the eyes removal, not needed here. Improve eyebrows, not needed here with the glasses. So I'm going to move down to the mouth tools. Lip saturation, let's try that, see what it does. That's not bad, but I just don't want to overdo it. Give her just a little bit. Lip redness, definitely not going to give her lipstick, not needed here. Lip darkening, not going to do that. Teeth whitening, most people could use a little of that. I'm going to give her some teeth whitening. A little more. Yeah, that looks all right. So let's go down to the skin tools in the next tab. Now this is skin softening. Generally the older people are, the more they need it, so she's not going to need much of that, but I'll give her a little bit. If you go too high, people start to look plasticky, like a, like a magazine cover model, too much retouching look like that. So I'll just go a moderate amount of skin softening. And shine removal is not needed here, but it's very handy if your lights are making hot spots on somebody's skin with shine. That'll help take that out. There's a little checkbox called skin defects removal. I'm going to check it. I don't know that it'll find anything here. I can't see any difference before and after with that. You notice it did leave her freckles. It did not remove freckles, which is pretty smart. I'm going to turn it back off though, because I don't see it doing anything. And the next tab down is Body AI, where you can change the shape. You can make somebody's waist narrower and all that. Now, obviously don't need any of that on this photo. The next one is called High Key, and this is kind of a cool tool. This is just a standard portrait look called high key photography that it dials in, kind of what's called a bleach process sometimes. And this is actually a pretty cool look. And almost anybody can make themselves look like a sophisticated photo editor by putting a process like this on at the end. And while I really like that look, I'm just going to take it back off because I want to try one more thing. While we're here, let's add a layer just for fun because we're in Luminar Neo. Before I do that though, I'll go before and after on all the changes I made so far. There's my original bad lighting version, and here's my retouched version, looking pretty good. So just for fun, let's just add a layer with some special effects. I'm just going to pick one of these flare type things that are included in Luminar Neo. Let's try that one. It's warm colors, and yeah, I like that. Let's see if I like the orientation a different direction. I think I like it that direction. I think I like it coming from the direction where the light's coming from a little better. And, I could change the opacity, make it too much, like that. Make it almost invisible, like that. I think I'll kind of go in the middle. But if I think it's hitting her face a little too much right here, as always, I can just mask, erase, take the strength down, get a big brush, big soft brush, and just tone it down a little on her face. So there we got a little bit of a special effect added. And if you ever want to hide just one layer, you can just click on the layer in the stack over here and do hide layer. That's the photo without that layer adjustment. I'll put that layer back on just for some lighting flares. And now I'll do the before and after on the whole photo. Before, after. So Luminar has really great portrait retouching tools, makes it very easy to do a lot of this work that you would do in Lightroom or Photoshop very quickly. One of the best features in both Luminar AI and Luminar Neo is the sky replacement feature. Here's a classic case where this is needed. Fun photo I took of a temple in Japan, but the sky is just blown out and boring. So I'm going to open the sky tool, pick sky selection, and I can just replace it with any of these. I'll just pick one at random. Looks great. Done. Want a different look? There's all kinds of different skies built in here. Plus you can add your own or buy kits of them. And maybe we want something more like a sunset. That looks great too. Now let's look at a slightly more complex sky replacement. Now of course there's absolutely nothing wrong with this beautiful blue sky. Well, actually I take it back. I see there's a dust spot there and there and there. So let's get rid of those dust spots first. Go to the erase tool, remove dust spots. Bang, done. Okay, now let's look at the sky. Now this sky is fine, but let's say we want to put a different sky in to make this more interesting. So I'm going to the Sky tab, Sky Selection. Now just about any of these blue skies would just drop right in here and make it look more interesting without any problem at all. All of these look just fine. But let's say I want something a little more moody. So I'm going to go to one of the skies that's a little more sunset-like. That's pretty dramatic. That's dramatic. That's dramatic. I'm trying to find one that kind of fits the mood here. I kind of like that one. So this one's got a warmer color temperature to it. And one thing you don't notice maybe as Luminar was swapping skies, you may not have noticed that it changes the color temperature of the entire photo to harmonize with the sky that you've chosen. And we can see this if I go into this tab called Scene Relighting, and I'll push up Relight Strength. And maybe you can see how it's changing the color temperature of the buildings in the scene. I'll push it all the way up. I'll make it even more obvious by pushing up Relight Saturation. So look at the warm color temperature of these buildings in the foreground and this temple here. If I take the Relight Saturation down, you can see the color temperature cool back off a bit. So I'm pushing those up just so you can see what Luminar is doing. And it does this automatically. Anytime you swap a sky, it does this behind the scenes color temperature remapping of the whole scene to try to make it harmonize as well as it can. Now, there are plenty of other adjustments in the sky section here, but I'm not going to go into all of those things. That's the material for a full Luminar course. But I find I rarely need to make any of those adjustments because Luminar is so smart on its own. Usually the default way it drops in a new sky looks perfect, and that's all I do. And in my opinion, the sky replacement feature alone makes it worth having Luminar. Now we're going to look at one of my favorite features that exists both in Luminar AI and Luminar Neo, and that is the Sunrays feature. And I thought this would be a fun photo to do it with. This is in Ireland, and if you're a fan of the show Game of Thrones, you might actually recognize this because this road was used as the King's Road in one episode of that show, maybe more than one. They put dirt down over this pavement and used this as the King's Road. So before I even get started with Sunrays and all that, there are a few things I want to do to this just to get it ready. First of all, I want to crop it because I don't like this brightness out on the sides here. So let's start out with the crop tool. I'm going to change it from its original ratio to free so I can crop it to any dimensions I want. I'm just going to bring it in to the trees so that I don't have that bright stuff out on the side because I'm going to try to make it a little more moody. Maybe a little less of the road down at the bottom too. And all right, that's more like it. In a moment, we'll get these people out of here, but first I just kind of want to get a feel for the look. So I'm going to switch over to the Presets tab, and I just want to make this into a black and white, which I think will have the moody feel that I want. And let's see, over here in the presets, pick from the monochrome set here. And I think that one might be good. It's interesting, you can see how it's lost my crop for a moment while it's thinking, but it's not finished yet. So give it a minute while it's applying this, and I think it'll, there we go. Took it a while to figure it out. Sometimes Luminar is pretty slow, even on my fast Mac. I'm hoping they continue to make performance improvements to it. All right, that's more like the mood that I want. Now, let's get these people out of the shot who are spoiling it. Believe it or not, this was the least amount of people I could get on this road when I was photographing it because this is very famous now because of its Game of Thrones history, and there are constantly little tour groups walking through this road. So let's wipe them out. Wipe out the tourists. That's always a good rule of thumb. So I'm going to go into the Erase tool, and looks like my brush is about the right size. Maybe I make it one click smaller. I'm just going to paint on this person. Got a little bit of the road. We'll see if that works. And I'm just going to click Erase. Okay, good enough. Now I'm going to paint out these other three people. I'm just going to put a little spot, a one-click spot on each one. Click, 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 Erase. Okay, done. I'm going to close the Erase tool. Now it's time to open up the Sunrays tool. Sunrays allows us to put a fake sun anywhere we want. So I'm going to pick Place Sun Center, which gives me a little thing here I can move around. Now to make it look realistic, I should put it in a place like here, or up here, or over here, where the sun might actually come from. I'll try it right here first. And then I'm going to push up the amount. That seems to make the sun rays go too much in all directions. I don't really want them going all over. I want them kind of coming down. So, they could come from up there. That looks pretty good. I'll turn them up so I can really see. Yeah, I like that. Let's see if it works better up here. It's pretty good too, but I think I liked it over there best. Then there's all kinds of things you can change about the rays themselves. I can change the overall look of the whole photo. The sun rays length, they can come all the way down, or they can just be up there in the trees. I think I'll kind of go, I think I'll bring them kind of all the way down. Penetration is how strong they are. And then there are settings about the sun and about the rays. You can change the number of rays from a whole bunch to just a few. Kind of go in the middle there. And then importantly for this photo, I need to change the warmth, because now that I changed this to a black and white, the sun rays are looking a little golden. So I'm going to take the sun rays warmth down to bring it more in line with the black and white photo. So that's looking pretty good. Now I want to add a little more mood, so I'll go into the develop tools. I'm going to bring these highlights down because these bright spots out here are still kind of bright for my taste. Just bring those highlights out there down a bit. And I might bring the overall exposure down a notch or two, just make it a little moodier. I go into structure, which boosts the contrast. I think I'll push that up a little bit, make it a little chunkier looking. Yeah, that's getting to more what I like. I'm going to add a vignette, a dark vignette by dragging it down. I'll do it real far so you can kind of see what it's doing, but then I'll back it off. I don't really need it to be that strong. And finally, maybe I'll add some film grain. Dirty it up a little with some grain. Let's see how it looks if I go way up. That's a little too grainy. Just put a little touch of it. There we go. So let me see my before and after. Before, after. I think that's a lot moodier. I'm happy with that. Now we'll look at a couple more of my favorite features in Luminar. This is an old cemetery in Ireland where the tombstones are literally sinking into the ground, and I love this one with the skull and crossbones on it. So the first thing I'm going to do is just put a preset on it to give it a little bit of a feel. So I think something in this overcast category, which are very dramatic. I'm going to try this one called backlit clouds, which really punches up the contrast. You can see how strong the contrast is. Now it's a little oversaturated though. So I'm going to go into the editing tab and take that saturation down a little. The color tab, bring down saturation. I'm going to use the HSL tab and bring down the green because that grass is just popping out of there a little too much. Bring the saturation down a little bit more. That's got a little more of the moody feel I'm looking for. I'm going to close that. Now I'm going to show you a couple tools that I love called Mystical and Glow. We'll do Mystical first. It's hard to describe what this does, so I'll just slide it up and you can kind of see. It adds a kind of soft focus effect. Difficult to describe exactly what the nature of it is, but I'll push it up. I'll go way up. Once it clicks in, we'll see what it's doing. You can see the detail pop back in. So now it feels a little Lord of the Rings-ish or something. I'll turn that off, back on. I just like it. And then I'll move to Glow, the one right below it. Now there's different types of glow. The first is just called Soft Focus. That's kind of nice. There's others. There's a Orton effect. I'll try Orton effect soft, see how I like that. Maybe it's getting too bright, so I'm going to bring down the overall. I'm just going to go back to the soft focus, I think. Push that up a little bit. Yeah, that's kind of got it. The whole thing is too bright though, so I'm going to go to the develop panel, bring down the exposure on the whole thing. I'm going to bring the saturation down some more because those tools pushed it up. Bring the green down some more. Bring the saturation down some more. That's looking good. Now I think I'm going to add some more sun rays just for fun. You know, we've already got a little sun up in the corner, a little bit of a glow. So I'm just going to work with that. Place the sun center outside that corner. Add some sun rays coming in from up there. You know, I feel like I'm in an Edgar Allan Poe story. Let's close that up. Before, after, before, after. Let's do one more just to show how I typically work through a photo in Luminar. Now, almost always with any photo, the first thing I will try is the general Enhance tool. Almost always helps. I'll just push up the accent slider and see what it does. Take it all the way up. That's much improved already. You can see if I turn it off and on, much better. Sky Enhancer helps out the sky. Now I can only go so far because this sky is so bad. Let me, there's the original sky. There's only so much to work with there, and so it starts showing a little noise when we crank it up too far. So I'm not going to go too far with the sky enhancer. This is much improved, so I think the next thing I'll do is put a preset on this to see if we can kind of give it a better feel. So I'll go to the Presets tab, pick from the Easy Landscapes. I'm just going to pick the first one and see what happens. Oh yeah. Yeah, much better already. So now we're getting somewhere. So I'm going to go back to the Edit tab here. Structure, I'm going to turn up the contrast because it looks really good on rocky stuff like this. But I don't want it affecting the sky, so I'm just going to mask that out of the sky. I'm going to erase it. I'm going to have full strength. I'll make my brush really big. Just going to mask the sky, get that structure, contrast that I put in out of the sky. Now it won't be making the sky look any grainier than it needs to. Now I've got a little bit of clutter in the foreground with these poles, so I'm going to go to the Erase tool, and I'll just take those out. Let's make my brush about the right size to paint out a pole. And click Erase. Boom, perfect. Now I'll paint out this other pole. Click Erase. Perfect. I'm going to take these little buildings out of here too while I'm at it. Erase. Yeah, now it's looking good. I'm going to go into the Develop tab, add even a little more contrast, Smart Contrast. Don't want to go too far. Take the highlights down. This is looking much better. Now the noise in the sky is bothering me, so I'm going to try denoise up there. I'm going to push up luminosity and color. And I'm not looking at what it's doing to the ground because I'm going to mask it out. It's definitely softening this too much, but it's making the sky look way better. It's got that noise out of there. So now what I will do is I'm going to brush that in on the sky only. I'm going to paint it in, full strength. Make my brush big. So I painted in the denoise on the sky without affecting the ground. Now, if I'm still not content with the way that sky looks, and it's pretty good, but I could always go do a sky swap if I wanted to get a different one in there and just pick any number of skies. And as always, Luminar really blends them in well. That one looks pretty good. So here we go. Before, after, before, after. So I think you can probably see why people love Luminar and why I think it's now an essential tool for every photographer. It just makes so many of these tasks easy with just one click or one slider to instantly improve things. And I didn't even scratch the surface. There are hundreds of functions and features that I didn't have time to show here. And that's why I recommend getting a full Luminar editing course, like the one I linked to down below this video, a course that shows you how everything in Luminar works. And once again, I also put links down below allowing you to get Luminar using my discount to save yourself a few bucks. I hope you found this helpful, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.